Excellent. So, MBA, Goldman Sachs, global investment banking entity in the world, engineer, recast, mergers and acquisitions, engineering, problem-solving skills, an African-American man in a space where there were a lot of people who look like you.
Right.
Talk about that space, what you learned from it, and more importantly, how did Vista Equity Partners emerge as a vision for you in that space?
Yeah. So the advantage of being a chemical engineer is we are taught and we learn a lot about what I call equilibrium systems. Okay? Markets are equilibrium systems. You know, departments are equilibrium systems. There are systems, and you got to figure out what is the equilibrium and what is the catalyst that's changing that equilibrium. I go into Goldman Sachs, and you got to remember, this is 1994. They're just now introducing computers. Literally, the 2 classes before, they were using slide rules and ledger paper.
Be careful.
Okay. I'm like, this is interesting, calculators, but no
Absolutely.
computers. We're going to introduce this thing, and it's a spreadsheet. Now, what was I doing 2 years before, 3 years before? Okay, I was implementing programmable logic controllers in plants. Okay, highly complex derivative operations, and now we're just doing plus minus divide. I'm like, oh, I got this. Right? And now I said, how do I distinguish myself in that context? Well, part is to create the best models. Okay, people didn't know, we used to use this thing, VisiCalc and Multiplan and all that, and we didn't even use Excel. There was a thing called Asterisk at Goldman. That's a whole other conversation. Actually, I'll get to that conversation in a minute, right? And I said, let me distinguish myself as being the best associate in doing that work. And oh, by the way, and so I could do that, I could outmodel anyone, okay? Because I was doing things in the plant that these people weren't going to do for another 8, 10, 15 years. Then I said, okay, now how do I create an impact beyond the deal? So then I created what was called real life training, a training program for the rest of first the M&A group, then the rest of the investment banking division. Okay, they ended up giving me some award for all that sort of stuff. But what I did was distinguish the fact in that equilibrium system that I had a unique skill and capability that no one else had. Land of the blind, one-eyed man is king, right? I said, all right, I'm gonna be the one-eyed man in this, right? And so through that, I established myself as being one of the best associates in that context. I then get tapped because of that to now become what's called the business unit manager for the M&A group. I was the youngest one to have ever done that. And everyone who gotten that job became partner early, okay? Because now you're managing the M&A business for Goldman Sachs for the chief, what is the principal M&A manager? Okay, great. So now I'm driving through that. Well, I also get a couple of assignments, one of which is to evaluate this thing called technology. Now, we didn't have a tech group at the time, okay? We had an M&A group, we had a corporate finance group, and we had taken a little company called Microsoft public, okay? But no one was focused on technology, and I said, you know what? There were 5 main competitors that had operations in San Francisco who are focused on technology, okay? There's a group called the Harm Group, which is Hamburg & Quist, Alex Brown, Robbie Stevens, Montgomery Securities. Some of you may remember those firms, and Morgan Stanley. And then they'd moved a couple people out there for them, and Credit Suisse at the time was trying to figure that whole thing out. I said, we need to start a tech group. So I went to the leader of our organization and said, let me tell you, and I go through the process and the planning. Here's why we should have a tech group. He said, it's a good idea. Why don't you go out there with me and start this tech group? I said, okay, but let me tell you what's going to cost. I said, it's going to cost a mentorship. This was the best banker I had ever met. Okay, lived out in a guy by the name of Gene Sykes, lived in LA. I said, Gene, I will only go if you now take me on as a mentee, because he had his fair-haired boys, right? He's like, okay, deal. I said, but Gene, that means you need to move to San Francisco. He bought a house and maybe went there 5 times. But point was, I now was getting the stewardship by the best M&A banker, frankly, I will say in the history of, M&A banking, okay? Guy was phenomenal. And now that was my price to him for me going out there. I was our first M&A banker on the ground in San Francisco focused on technology in 1997, okay? So I had this little company called Apple Computer as my client. That little company called Microsoft, a little company called Hewlett Packard, a little company called Yahoo, a little company called eBay. Okay, heard of those, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Right?
Just
Those
a little
were
bit.
my clients. Okay, and because I'm out on the West Coast, you didn't have all the East Coast people trying to focus on them because they didn't. And by the way, when I went out there, they said, well, just in case this tech thing doesn't work, why don't you still keep, I had Unilever as one of your clients because, you know, we don't know if this thing's going to work out, right? Spotting a equilibrium that's out of order, and there's going to be a new equilibrium. Now, how do I know that? Because I had just been in a plant where if you implemented technology, in that case compute, programmable logic controller, it increased the production of that plant by 26%. We're now starting to introduce it into the offices, something as simple as Excel, increase the productivity of our analysts and our associates in the Goldman Sachs merger. Now, all of a sudden, guess what? You start implementing this technology in insurance companies and banking, and it's going to create a massive productivity curve, a massive shift in what is the equilibrium. Go be in the center of it. And that's why that made sense to do.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's get to the second part of your question. Why Vista? Because what I saw was early days. Let me ask a question. Show of hands, who has used any spreadsheet here besides Excel? Okay, 5. Okay, you guys using Google Sheets, right? Okay, this is a sea change. 5 years ago, there will be no hands coming up. Well, it will be 4 hands with hair like mine and yours. Yep. And I said, oh yeah, remember, Lotus 1, 2, 3. There was, some of you are like, yeah, I remember, yeah. That's why I'm raising my hand, Lotus 1, 2, 3. See, you don't know anything about Google Sheets. There was Multiplan, there was, VistaCalc. But in essence, one company ended up consolidating the primary software solution that's used across the planet for financial analysis, Excel. Now, Google, after $15 billion a year, has probably got a 2% market share. You saw a little bit of it expressed. This is in a college is where they're introducing it. You see what I mean? So now 15 years from now, you guys are going to be saying, how many of you guys use anything other than Google Sheets, right? That's probably going to happen. But what happens in enterprise software is it is still a winner-take-all, winner-take-most type of model. That's the equilibrium system that I saw that was changing. Okay, so why Vista? Because I said, you know what? There's a bunch, as you push compute into the economy, there's going to be a whole lot of startups and businesses that are utilizing and building application software. And 4 or 5 competitors ultimately in a space that will consolidate to one or consolidate to 2. And those 1 or 2 will capture all the economic rent out of that marketplace. And no one was doing buyouts in that space. Another spotting of an equilibrium system in change. That's why Vista.
Outstanding.